My niece was 9 years old when she shoved the glass scale model of my first finished building off the patio table, watched it explode across my mother's flagstone, and announced to everyone that cleaning up after this family was the only thing I had ever been good for. The whole patio laughed. My brother laughed the loudest, a beer sweating in his hand, beaming like his daughter had just delivered the joke of the year. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I crouched down, picked up the one little tower that hadn't shattered, set it back on the table, and walked to my car. That night, my mother texted the family group to tell me they'd taken a vote, that I had embarrassed them in front of the Ashfords one too many times, and that from this point forward I needed to keep my distance, permanently. My sister-in-law tapped a heart on the message before I'd finished reading it. I sent back 5 words. I'm pulling every name Monday. By 2 in the morning, my phone had logged 117 missed calls. If you've ever been the one your family kept at arm's length while they quietly lived off your back, do me a favor. Friend, tell me what city you're listening from, and stay with me, because you are about to watch exactly how fast a kingdom comes down once the person holding it up decides to let go. It was the first Saturday in June, and the heat hung thick over my parents' house on the manicured side of Charlotte. The party was supposed to be for me. 3 days earlier, I had cut the ribbon on the Dunmore building, a 100-year-old downtown warehouse my company had spent 2 years and a great deal of my own money turning into a gleaming mixed-use landmark, the kind of project that gets written up in the business journal. I am 31. I built that. But standing on my parents' patio, you would never have known the day had anything to do with me. The whole yard orbited my older brother Julian, 36, and his wife Brooke, who had spent the afternoon narrating, in great detail, how the Ashford Foundation Gala the following week was going to change everything for the family. The Ashfords were Brooke's people. Old Charlotte Money, a name on the side of a hospital wing. A charitable foundation with an endowment large enough that the mere mention of it made my mother's voice go soft and reverent. My parents, Reginald and Pearl Voss, worshipped that name. They had spent my entire childhood treating proximity to it like the family's crowning achievement. I had brought the model with me anyway. A beautiful thing, a foot tall, the Dunmore rendered in frosted glass and brushed steel, commissioned for the lobby. I set it on the table, thinking foolishly that somebody might want to see what I had made. Brooke barely glanced at it. "Cute," she said, and went back to her phone. Julian sauntered over, tipped his beer toward my diploma cover of a model, and said loud enough for the whole yard, "What is this? A dollhouse? You know real developers don't play with toys, Imani." My mother laughed her wine laugh. And little Aubrey, who had never once in her short life been told no, drifted over, looked at me with my brother's exact bored expression, and said, "Nobody even wanted your dumb dollhouse. Mommy says you only come around when you want money." Then she pushed it off the edge with one finger. The glass hit the stone and burst apart with a sound like a small bell breaking. I stood very still. Aubrey pointed at the wreckage, delighted with herself, and said, "Clean it up, Auntie. That's what you do for us." And the patio laughed. My mother glided over with a fresh glass of rosé, looked at the broken glass, then at my face, and waved her hand. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Imani. It's glue and glass. You can have another one made. Julian just got us all invited to sit at the Ashford table next week. The whole family is in a wonderful mood. Don't ruin it." My father straightened up, his jaw setting into the hard line I had feared my whole life. "Watch your face, Imani. We have important people coming through here this summer. We are not going to let your jealousy of your sister-in-law turn into a scene. You've always carried a chip on your shoulder because Julian married up. Don't start drama over a piece of plastic." I looked at the 4 of them. My brother with his smirk, Brooke with her, practiced pity. My parents arranged shoulder to shoulder, defending the man my mother called up and the family she wanted to belong to, against their own daughter. And I understood, the way you understand a thing in your bones rather than your head, that I had never once been a player in this house. I had been the help, the fixer, the line of credit they pretended not to use. Decades ago, someone had handed me the role of the disappointment, and nothing I ever achieved was going to rewrite that script. So I didn't yell, and I didn't throw a fit. I pulled a napkin from the table, wiped a fleck of glass dust off my wrist, and I smiled. It was a small, hollow, freezing smile. "You know what? You're completely right," I said, my voice perfectly even. "I would hate to ruin the mood. Enjoy the Ashfords." I turned and walked through the gate while my mother called after me that I was being impossible. The drive home was silent, but my mind was anything but. I was already moving through every liability that tied me to these people, every signature I had ever given them. I thought about being 22, and the will. My grandmother, Nana Ruth, the one person who ever looked at me like I was worth something, had died and left the Dunmore building to me. Not to Julian, to me, by name, because she said I was the only one in the family who understood the difference between owning a thing and earning it. And I thought about how, within a month of the funeral, my parents had sat me down at that same patio table and explained, with my mother weeping on cue, that Julian had a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity and that a strong girl like me would understand that family money should go where it could grow. They told me to sign the building over so it could be sold, and the cash funneled into Julian's first company. They told me I'd land on my feet, because I always did. And God help me, at 22, desperate for them to love me, I signed. They sold my grandmother's building out from under me to bankroll a son who has never built anything in his life. So I built. I took the humiliation and I turned it into fuel. I clawed my way through nights and weekends and a mountain of debt, and I built a real estate development firm out of nothing. A quiet little powerhouse called Cornerstone Equity Partners, where I am the majority principal, and almost no one outside the industry knows my name. And 4 years ago, when a tired old warehouse came back on the market downtown, I recognized it the second I saw the address. It was Nana's building. The Dunmore. I bought it back. I never told a soul in my family. And 18 months ago, when Julian came begging for a prestigious downtown headquarters for his private wealth concierge firm, a glossy nothing of a company that exists mostly to impress the Ashfords, I leased him the entire penthouse, floor of the Dunmore through a holding company, at a rate so far below market that I had personally been subsidizing the difference every single month. My brother ran his fake empire out of the building my family stole from me and made me buy back. He had no idea. None of them did. 2 hours after I left the party, the group text arrived. "We have discussed your behavior at length," it read. "Your attitude today was an embarrassment to Julian and to the Ashfords. We have decided to step back from this relationship until you can act with humility. Please keep your distance." Brooke liked it. My mother liked it. I poured myself a glass of wine, read it twice, and felt something I can only describe as relief. They wanted distance. They wanted to sever the cord. They had no comprehension of how much of their world was strung from that cord. I set my glass down and typed, "Understood. I'm removing my name from every loan and every guarantee by Monday morning, and Julian's lease terminates at the end of the month. Take care." Then I walked into my home office, opened my laptop, and I didn't just make a threat. I sent instructions to my attorney and my CFO. By the time my phone had buzzed itself off the edge of the couch, I had already started. By 2 a.m., the counter read 117. The first crack showed the next morning, and it showed in public. Brooke had booked the grand ballroom at the Ashford Families Club to prepay the gala deposit, a flashy gesture meant to be seen. Julian put it on the firm's card in front of the club's events director and 2 of Brooke's cousins. It declined. He tried his personal black card, the one he flashed like a personality. Declined. Because the credit line that funded my brother's entire lifestyle had a cosigner, and that cosigner had spent Saturday evening calmly, methodically, lawfully cutting herself loose. I heard about it from 3 different relatives by lunch. I didn't gloat. I reviewed a construction schedule, approved a permit, and drank my coffee in the quiet of an office that owed nothing to anyone. They came to me Tuesday. My mother first, picking her way up the front walk of my building in her good scarf, my father trailing behind her with his hands jammed in his pockets, both of them trying to look like they weren't terrified. My mother had her concerned mother face on, the one I'd watched her deploy my whole life. "Imani, baby," she started, reaching for my arm. "What is happening? Why would you do this to your brother? You know how this family works. We stick together. We protect our own. You're going to humiliate us in front of the Ashfords. What will Eleanor Ashford think when she hears about this circus? I looked at her hovering hand and felt absolutely nothing. Stick together, I repeated. Protect our own. That's fascinating, Mom. When did that rule come into effect? Was it Saturday? When you watched a 9-year-old call me the help and told me I was being dramatic? Or was it 10 years ago at the will reading? My mother flinched and dropped her hand. That was different, she said. Nana wasn't in her right mind. We did what was best for the whole family. You sold my grandmother's building, I said, and I let every word land. She left it to me, by name, because she knew exactly who in this house could be trusted with something. And you cried at me until I signed it away so Julian could play businessman. You took the one thing that was mine and you handed it to a man who has never earned a dollar he didn't borrow from someone else. My father's chest swelled. He stepped up, jabbing a thick finger toward me. That is enough. We gave you life. We put food in your mouth and a roof over your head. You will log into whatever account you're holding hostage and you will turn your brother's money back on. Today. You are tearing this family apart out of pure spite. I didn't move an inch. Respect is earned, Dad. You lost mine the day you decided my future was worth less than Julian's reputation. You stand on my back and call it family. You've been broke for years, both of you, propped up by a daughter you're ashamed of. You don't want me at the table. You just don't want me to take the table with me when I go. And then I told them the thing I'd been holding. By the way, Julian doesn't lease that penthouse from a holding company. He leases it from me. I own the Dunmore. I bought Nana's building back. And the lease is over. I watched the blood leave my father's face. The Ashford Foundation Gala happened that Saturday, and I went, because I had been quietly invited by Eleanor Ashford herself, not as Brooke's in-law, but as the developer of the Dunmore, a project her foundation had its eye on. My family didn't know I'd be there until they saw me. What none of them knew was that for 6 months I had been sitting on something far heavier than a lease. Julian's private wealth concierge firm managed money for exactly one significant client, the Ashford Foundation's charitable investment account, a relationship Brooke had handed him to make him look legitimate. And Julian, who had never built anything, had been quietly bleeding that account dry, moving foundation money into a shell to cover the lifestyle his declining cards could no longer support. He had borrowed against my credit, used my building's prestigious address to manufacture trust, and stolen from the very family he was so desperate to impress. I had the records. Clean, complete, and 3 days earlier I had walked the entire file into the regional office of the SEC. I will not pretend I didn't choose the moment. Halfway through the evening, in front of the chandeliers and the donors and the cousins, 2 investigators and the foundation's own general counsel approached the head table. Eleanor Ashford's face went to stone as the counsel murmured in her ear and slid a folder in front of her. The room didn't erupt. It went silent, which is worse. Julian shot up from his chair, knocking his wine across the white tablecloth, sputtering that there had been a mistake, that he could explain, that someone was framing him. And then the part I will remember for the rest of my life. My brother, cornered, turned, and pointed at his own wife. Brooke set up the accounts, he shouted. She told me the foundation money was just sitting there. She's the one who wanted the house in Blowing Rock. She pushed me to do it. Brooke gasped, her hand flying to her chest, and then her survival instinct kicked in faster than her loyalty. I had no idea what he was doing, she cried, loud enough for her grandmother to hear. He lied to all of us. He's not really one of us, Eleanor. He never was. My parents sat frozen between them, watching the 2 people they had bankrupted themselves to elevate, tear each other apart over a stolen endowment, in front of the only people whose opinion they had ever cared about. I stepped forward, because I wanted them to see me. You stole from a charity, I said, my voice cutting clean across my mother's theatrical sobbing, so you could pretend to be people you were never willing to work to become. You didn't want to build a legacy. You wanted to be seen standing next to one. You sold my inheritance and my dignity to buy a costume, and the second somebody checked the seams, it fell apart. Eleanor Ashford looked at my parents the way you look at a stain. The donors had taken a collective step back, leaving my family alone in the center of the room, exactly where they had spent 30 years trying not to stand. Within the week, Brooke filed for divorce, and her family's attorneys made sure she emerged untouched. Within the month, Julian was indicted on federal wire fraud and embezzlement charges. His assets were frozen. The money was gone. The Ashfords changed their locks and their phone numbers and acted as though the Vosses had never existed. They came to my office one more time, my father and Julian, the week the charges came down. Sarah, my assistant, tried to stop them and I waved her off. My brother, who used to call my work cute, stood in front of my desk in a wrinkled blazer he looked like he'd slept in, his hands shaking. "Imani, please," he said. "You have to help us. The lawyers, the bond, Mom and Dad's house. It's all coming due. We're family." I leaned back in my chair, crossed my legs and folded my hands. I did not offer them a seat. I did not offer them water. I just let the silence stretch until it hurt. "Help you do what, exactly?" I finally said. "I built something real, with my own hands. After you took everything that was supposed to give me a head start, you stood on what I built and called it yours. There's nothing left for me to fix. There never was. You were always going to fall the moment I stopped breaking my own back to hold you up." My parents' house fell last, and they handed it to me themselves. Their mortgage had a cosigner me, and when my name came off and Julian's money evaporated, the payments they could no longer cover went into default. I held the note now. Cornerstone had quietly acquired it. I offered them a clean 60 days to sell, walk away with their dignity, and start over somewhere modest. They refused. My father, too proud to accept anything that looked like mercy from me, did something staggeringly stupid instead. To pay me off and be done with me, he took out an emergency hard money loan against the house from a lender a desperate man finds on the internet at midnight, signing 50 pages of the most predatory language I have ever read, without letting a single attorney look at it. He never bothered to check who funded that lender. It was a subsidiary of mine. The terms triggered immediate deed forfeiture the instant the underlying default hit, which it already had. He signed away the last grace period, the last hearing, the last protection he had left, just to avoid looking me in the eye and saying the word sorry. By trying to outrun me, my father signed the family home directly into my hands. I gave them 72 hours. I drove out to the house and let myself in with my own key, and while they scrambled, I made myself a cup of coffee in my mother's kitchen and carried it into my father's study. I sat down in his chair, the leather one at the head of the room that he had forbidden anyone else to so much as touch for as long as I'd been alive. It was very comfortable. From there, I had a perfect view of them packing a lifetime of pretend wealth into heavy black trash bags, because the accounts were frozen and there was no money for movers. I watched my mother haul bags of designer clothes across the marble she used to brag about. I watched my father, gray and silent, fold his custom suits into cardboard boxes, unable to meet my eyes, the booming voice that ran this family for decades reduced to nothing by the cold arithmetic of a contract he refused to read. When the last bag was in the trunk of the second-hand sedan they used to hide in the garage so the neighbors wouldn't see it, my mother stopped in the doorway. "Imani," she whispered, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Please, we're blood. You can't really do this to us. Give us one more chance." I set the coffee cup down. The little click of the ceramic echoed in the empty room. "You told me to keep my distance," I said. "You told me in writing that I wasn't part of this family anymore. I'm just respecting your wishes." She had nothing left to say. She turned and walked out, and they drove down the long driveway until the engine faded into the quiet, and I locked the door behind them. The piece of this I won't ever apologize for is what I did with what was left. I never wanted that gaudy monument to my father's ego, so I sold it not to a flipper, not to one of the vultures who circle a foreclosure, but to a young couple I vetted myself, a public school teacher and a NICU nurse with 2 kids and a third on the way, at a fair and honest price, people who will actually earn the ground they stand on. And the money from that sale, every cent of it, I poured into Nana Ruth's building. The Dunmore's ground floor is now an incubator. Cheap, dignified workspace for first-generation entrepreneurs and women trying to build something from nothing, the way I once did, with a wall of natural light and a plaque by the door that says, simply, for Ruth, who knew the difference. And then there is Aubrey. The audience always asks me what happens to the child, and the honest answer is that the collapse changed her life too. There was no more private academy, no more pony, no more being told yes 100 times a day. She and her mother live small now. But here is the thing I decided. The one line I would not let myself cross. I refused to do to a child what my family did to me. A few months after everything fell, a letter showed up at my office in a 9-year-old's careful handwriting, 3 lines long, telling me she was sorry about my dollhouse, that she didn't really know what those words meant when she said them. Children can be taught contempt, and they can be untaught it. So, I set up a small education trust, quietly, in Aubrey's name, not for her mother to touch, only for her, only for school, because the cycle stops when somebody decides it stops, and I would rather be the one who decided. For 31 years they called me the black sheep of this family, the disappointment, the one who didn't fit. They never once understood what I finally understand now. I wasn't the crack in the foundation, I was the foundation. And the thing about a foundation, friend, is that the day it decides to get up and walk away, every single wall you built on top of it has to come down with it. I didn't burn their house to the ground. I just stopped being the ground it stood on. Then I poured myself a glass of wine in a home I earned, looked out over a city I helped build, and I let myself, for the first time in my life, feel absolutely nothing but peace. Worth more than any building you'll ever raise is the quiet certainty that you earned it yourself. If someone keeps making you feel small, remember that your steady, unseen work is holding more than they know, so hold yourself with that same care. Walk away from the rooms that shrink you, build the ones that don't, and leave a door open for the child who can still be taught kindness.